Okay, so here we're going to work on writing equations of lines. So there are there's three formats for the equation of a line, okay? And I really only use two of those to write equations of lines. So the first one is the slope-intercept form. This is the one you're probably most familiar with, and that's y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope of the equation, okay, and b is the y-coordinate for the y-intercept. So it has a y-intercept that looks like 0 something. Okay. So the only time I just start off with this form, now most of the time a lot of the questions will ask you to write it in slope-intercept form, but I usually don't start there unless I'm already given the slope and a y-intercept. Okay? So suppose we're given that the slope is negative 1/2 and the y-intercept is 0.5. If I'm given this information, and it might say slope instead of m, and it might have b instead of y-intercept. Okay, it might just have b equals 5. If that's the case, then my equation is really simply, all you have to do is make substitution. Put the negative 1/2 in for slope, and a plus 5 there. Now, just be careful if the y-intercept is negative, that you have a minus. So if you're given that the slope is 3 and the y-coordinate is a negative 7, then this would just be y equals 3x minus 7. Okay? So those are kind of the easiest ones because you just have to make the substitution. Now, what happens if you're not given the y-intercept? So let's just say that we're given, and we start off with the point or the slope, negative 2/3, and we have just some random point on the graph, and it's going to be 1, negative 2. So when this happens, I use, or when any situation happens like this one, or if you're just given 2 points, I always use what we call the point slope form. Okay, so the point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what you're given is that there's a point that they give you. Oh, it's driving me crazy. Okay, so you're given that we have a point x1, y1, and then we need the slope, whatever that is. You do not substitute in for x and y at any point. The only thing that we're going to use to make substitutions and stuff is the x1 and the y1. But when we make that substitution, then we get y minus the y-coordinate of the point. Mine was given as a negative 2 equals the slope, negative 2/3 times x minus whatever the x-coordinate is. In this case, it's 1. And when I make substitutions, if you haven't noticed, I always put them in parentheses because you can't go wrong doing that, but sometimes you can mess up if you don't. Now, I want to write this in slope-intercept form, just because, okay? When you go to write it in slope-intercept form, always just simplify, okay, both sides. So we're going to have y plus 2, and I'm going to use my distributive property. So that's 2/3 x plus 2/3. We're just taking the 2/3 here and we're multiplying it by x and by the negative 1, and you get negative and negative give you the positive. The second step, and it's always just 2 steps to get from one form to the next, is to add or subtract the number next to the y. Okay, so in this case, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So that's going to leave me with y equals negative 2/3. Now, what is 2/3 minus 2? So doing some scratch work over here. Thirds minus, remember that's 2 over 1, and we need a common denominator. So I'll multiply this by 3, multiply the top by 3, minus 6/3. That should have been a positive 2/3, sorry. Started to have a mistake in there. Be real careful about that sort of stuff. So now we add up the numerators. So that's negative 4/3, leave the denominator alone. So this will be a negative 4/3. And there's the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So if the equation doesn't stipulate which form, that's fine. This one is okay. I like this form myself. You can leave it in point-slope form. But if the question does say write it in slope-intercept form, then you have to do these additional 2 steps. Otherwise, stop at the simplifying thing, okay? Now, what if we're given simply 2 points? So let's say we have the line passes through the point 1, 2, and 3, negative 7. So the first thing, we always need the slope, no matter what. We need the slope, and we need some point on the graph. So I have to find the slope. So keep in mind the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where your 2 points are, excuse me. Oh, come on. x1, y1, and the other point is we just label x2, y2. So one thing that you should probably do, at least at first, is label your points. Because sometimes it's really easy to mix up your x's and y's and stuff like that. So I would go up here and I would label this x1, y1, and x2, y2. Just so that way when I make the substitutions, I don't get too confused. So m is y2 minus y1, so that's negative 7 minus 2. And then the denominator is x2 minus x1. So that'd be negative 9 over 4. So negative 9/4 is our slope. Always just stick the negative out in front because negative divided by positive is a negative number. Now we'll revert to the point slope form. We have the slope, and now we have 2 points to choose from, and you can actually use either one of them. It doesn't matter. So now writing the equation of the line, remember point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Just for consistency, I'm going to go ahead and use the ones I labeled x1 and y1. So y minus y1 was 2. The slope is negative 9/4. X minus x1 was a negative 1. So simplifying, if I need to write it in point slope form, I can just leave it just like this. But if I need slope intercept form, I got to get rid of that 2. So I'm going to add, I'm going to distribute first. So that way I get all my like terms and stuff. So that's 9/4 x minus 9/4. When I distribute that and here, multiply it there and there. Now I'm going to add the 2. So off to the side again, negative 9/4 plus 2 be negative 9/4 plus, remember that's 2 over 1, right? Common denominator would be a 4, so that would be 8 over 4. So that would be negative 1/4. So So that leaves me with y equals negative 9/4 x minus 1/4. And there it is in slope-intercept form. So if you need any additional help, please just holler.